Everyone, I am Subia Khan of 9th semester from the Department of Molecular Biology. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our eminent speaker, Dr. M.N. Sumana, who is going to talk on antimicrobial resistance, a ticking time bomb. This is a subject of utmost importance because antimicrobial resistance, that is AMR, threatens the effective prevention and treatment of an ever-increasing range of infections caused by bacteria, parasites, viruses, and fungi, and is an increasingly serious threat to global public health. We are looking forward to get great insights through this talk. Dr. Sumana is currently a professor and HOD of Department of Microbiology in JSS Medical College, Mysuru. She is ICTC Medical Officer and Infection Control Officer in JSS Medical College. She completed her bachelor's degree in medicine from Bangalore Medical College and Research Institute. Furthermore, she has done her MD in microbiology from Mysore Medical College and Research Institute. She has acquired advanced training in microbiology, infectious diseases, and mycology, to name a few. Her avid areas of interest include primary and secondary prevention of HIV, antiretroviral therapy adherence, prevention of drug resistance, and eradication of AIDS stigma. Dr. Sumana is a dedicated mentor and researcher. She has mentored 7 PhD scholars and 7 MD students. She has contributed in various fields of research. She is an active member of Indian Association of Medical Microbiology. She is a reviewer for professional publications like Journal of Evolution of Medical and Dental Sciences, International Journal of Health and Allied Sciences, and Woodlawn Journal. She has participated in various national and international conferences and symposiums and has been a resource person and chairperson for several others. She has made a significant contribution in creating public awareness for HIV/AIDS. Some of the public service activities are organization of 4 ICTC camps at rural fairs and testing of more than 2,000 patients for HIV. She has conducted camps for syndromic management of sexually transmitted infections at rural fairs and treated hundreds of patients in Mysore. She has prepared and presented nearly 300 posters and 30 models on public health education. She has 25 posters on HIV to educate public and has designed posters on HIV and non-communicable diseases for KSAPS and Department of Health and Welfare, Family Welfare, Government of Karnataka. She has delivered more than 150 lectures at various places on myths and facts of HIV/AIDS. She has delivered more than 10 lectures on adolescent, reproductive, and sexual health. She has published 54 papers and has 14 ongoing projects. Her service has garnered appreciation and various awards, some of them being Mother Teresa Award for Community Mobilization in the International Conference on AIDS, Best Citizen of India Gold Medal Award for conducting rural health education programs by Global Economic Progress and Research Association India, Mahatma Gandhi Gold Medal Award for Excellence in the Field of Microbiology at the 34th Unity Conference, Medical Excellence Award for Outstanding Achievements and Remarkable Role in the Field of Medicine, Ruler Awards, Research Peace Award of 2019 for International Innovation Betterment and Excellence in Technical Research, International Innovative Researcher in Antibiotic Resistance. She is the editorial board member of Journal of Immunology and Vaccine Technology and editorial board member of Gene Technology. Apart from being excellent in research and academics, Dr. Sumana has a keen interest in cartoon preparation for public education and diseases, preparation of working models of diseases for public education, educating public on the prevention of HIV, and some of her hobbies include painting, embroidery, and classical dance like Bharatanatyam. Over to you, ma'am. We hope all of us will obtain great perception through your talk. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Subia. Now we'll have the inaugural lecture by Dr. M.N. Sumana on antimicrobial resistance, a ticking time bomb. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Syed, and the person who introduced me for your kind words of introduction. Can I have my slides, slideshow that I share with you, Devaki ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, it will be shared.
Okay. So first of all, I thank the principal of Yuvaraja College, the Yashoda madam, and also Devaki madam for inviting me to deliver an important inaugural address on antimicrobial resistance. In fact, of late, I have been working on antimicrobial resistance and developed various innovative games in teaching students on the rational use of antibiotics. So it's my pleasure to deliver the inaugural address here because we have taken an initiative to spread the message in the community on the rational use of antimicrobial agents. Can I have the slide show, please? Yeah. The next slide, please.
Next slide. One second.
Okay. See, people have given you some kind of an introduction on antimicrobial resistance. And antibiotic resistance is a very serious problem. And it is a ticking time bomb. Are we serious enough? Many of the infections which were not treatable earlier before the invention of penicillin by Alexander Fleming has now become treatable. But there is an opportunity for every species on earth to develop some characters which make them resistant to the adverse atmosphere or the environment created. So because of the adverse environment that we created by using the antimicrobial agents, the organisms have developed resistance. So it's like the survival of the fittest. God gives opportunity to every species to survive by itself. So it's a ticking time bomb and we have to take it very seriously. Can I have the next slide? The slideshow has disappeared. Can I have the next slide, please?
Sorry for the inconvenience. We have bad network here. We are just setting it.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you, Syed. Antimicrobial resistance. Can you all hear me? Syed, are you there? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
ma'am. I can hear. Yes, ma'am. I can.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, antibiotic resistance is a worldwide problem. It's not just present in India. We know in our country, we have the maximum irrational usage of antibiotics, but still it's a global problem, not just a local problem. And I'm very happy that the Yuvarajas College, the students have come forward to take the initiative on spreading the message on irrational use of antibiotics. And if you can educate the community on the rational use of antibiotics, I think we'll be able to win the battle against the microbes. Next slide. Yeah. So to fight against this antimicrobial resistance, we have a global action plan. So for which the most important components are these. First and foremost is you just get informed and then gather the data, prevent infections, regulate medicines, and invest now. Invest maybe in the terms of money, manpower, or education and various other things. So the time is running out. We cannot wait for the change. We need to change at the earliest because it's a ticking time bomb. Next slide. Yeah. See, I'm from JSS Medical College and JSS Hospital, Mysuru. Ours is a teaching hospital. Our core value of the department, we have various distinctiveness of our department, but the core value is save antibiotics and save lives. All our activities revolve around this theme or the core value, save antibiotics and save lives. We have NABL accreditation, we have various other diagnostic facilities to diagnose the infectious disease specifically so that specific antimicrobial agent can be used to treat these infections. So that's very, very important if we have to take the drive forward to combat the antimicrobial resistance. Next slide. Now, save antibiotics to save lives. This particular picture very clearly depicts, if you want to save lives, please save antibiotics. It's just like dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. So if you protect the antibiotics, your life will be saved by the antibiotics. It's just like that. Next slide. Now, what is the gravity of the problem across the globe or in the hospitals? What is the amount of antibiotic used? You all know that in our Indian hospitals and clinics, we use a lot of antibiotics. And we have the inpatients in the hospital more than one person. If you take an average, about 1.5 people amongst 2 people are on antibiotics. So the antibiotics are used irrationally right, left, and center. So that is the gravity of the problem. With the irrational use of antimicrobial agents, we're going to promote antimicrobial resistance. Next slide. Now here, this man has got some infection acquired in the hospital, and the wife is asking, the hospital staff did this to you? It may be the hospital staff, by improper hand washing or hand hygiene, must have treated the patient. And this person is saying, no, the hospital staff, STAPH, that means the Staphylococcus aureus, which is a common pathogen in the hospital, has done this to me, is his answer. It's both the hospital staff and the Staph aureus which has done this damage to the patient. Next slide. Now, what is this antibiotic stewardship? This antibiotic stewardship is to decrease the antibiotic resistance and decrease Clostridium difficile infections and decrease the cost of treatment. And this will improve the outcome for the patients in the hospital. The same thing holds good for people in the community as well. So stewardship means you reduce the resistance and improve the outcome for the patients. What is C. difficile infection? Maybe if you're interested, I can tell you later because it's out of the topic. So let us discuss sometime later. If you have some questions in the end, I'll take the questions and I'll answer to you. Next slide. Now, according to World Health Organization, what are the causes of antibiotic resistance? Number one, you can see over prescription of the antibiotics, patients not finishing the treatment. The antibiotics are prescribed usually for common cold, the upper respiratory tract infections, where most of the infections are viral. More than 95% of the infections, upper respiratory infections, are viral. But the doctors, to be on the safer side, if they get secondary bacterial infection, they would treat the patient with antibiotics. But what the patient does is, the viral fever just comes down by itself. And then once he feels better, he'll stop taking the antibiotics. So the improper dosing of the antibiotic and not completing the course of antibiotic can enhance the antimicrobial resistance. And then the other causes, overuse of antibiotics in the livestock and fish farming. So in the veterinary practice or in the agricultural practice, lots of antibiotics are used. Manures, which are made up of animal feces, these animals are fed with certain fertilizers which are impregnated with antimicrobial agents, and when it enters the gut of this cattle or whatever kind of animal, it gets into the intestine and the large intestine, and there the normal commensal bacteria that are present are exposed to these antimicrobial agents, and then they start developing the resistance. So these animals excrete drug-resistant organisms in their feces. And the feces is used as a manure to grow the plants in the agricultural practice. And that's how the antimicrobial resistance goes on spreading. And another important reason is lack of new antibiotics being developed. For the past 2 to 3 decades, we have not had any new antimicrobial agent that has come into the market. Whatever we have in the same group of agents, another new molecule is introduced, but we do not have a newer molecule of antimicrobial agent that has been introduced into the clinical practice. So we have been playing with the old antibiotics. So organisms that are exposed to the antibiotics slowly start developing the resistance. And one more reason for the antibiotic resistance is lack of hygiene and poor sanitation. Hygiene and good sanitation would promote health. It will prevent infections. So this is another important reason for the increasing antimicrobial resistance. Our next one is poor infection control practices in the hospitals and clinics. So according to WHO, these are the important causes of antimicrobial resistance and where should we act? Next slide. Yeah. Now, how the antibiotic resistance spreads in the community. So these are the antimicrobial agents. George gets antibiotics and develops resistance bacteria in his gut. Just similar to the animals, which ingest the antimicrobial agent along with the food or the fodder, humans also ingest, and whatever commensal bacteria are present in the gut develop resistance. If George stays at home and in the general community, he spreads the resistant bacteria to the community. Or if he gets to the hospital or any healthcare facility, he will spread the infection there in the healthcare facility. So the resistant bacteria spread from one patient to another patient, and it also is present on the surfaces within the healthcare facility. The patients go home and they can spread the infection to the community again. And then here, antimicrobial agents are used in the veterinary practice and the agricultural practice. Animals get antibiotics and develop resistance. And bacteria in the gut develop resistant organisms. So from the animals, the fertilizers which uses the feces of animals and water contaminated with the animal feces and drug-resistant bacteria is used on food crops. So this fertilizer and water is used for the growth of food crops. And from here, the drug-resistant bacteria in the animal feces can remain on the crops and that can be eaten. These bacteria can remain in the human gut. And so from this, it enters into the community again. So this is how the antimicrobial resistance spreads in the community. It's from the animals, from the agricultural produce. Finally, it's the humans which are targeted and they develop the antimicrobial resistance. Next slide, please. Okay. So these are the 3 wheels which are driving one another. One thing is animal feeds having antimicrobial agents develop resistance in the gut microbes, and excreta in the soil, entry of the resistant organisms into the plant microbes, and then consumption of plant and animal food by man, and the resistance is transferred to the community. So these are the 3 wheels which are driving one another. Next slide. So what do? We need to do the stewardship. Antimicrobial stewardship has to be done. And how do we do it? So if you do it, it should be in a smart way. You may work very hard, but if it has no outcome, then it is a waste. So be a smart steward. And I'm very happy to see that you people have taken the initiative to start this club. And so let us discuss how smartly we can do the antimicrobial stewardship in the community, for which I'll be telling you few of the stewardship protocols that we have in the hospital. Next slide. Now, first and foremost is prevention of infection. Prevention is better than cure, all of you know. For this, I have devised a poem, a simple poem, a nursery rhyme I have devised for hand hygiene. 1, 2 hands are 2. And 3, 4 hand rub pour. Hand rub, or you can soap water pour. You can say 3, 4 soap water pour. 5, 6 rub to lux. Rub to lux in the sense deep cleansing is important. When you're rubbing, it should look like you're trying to give a polish to your hand. So rub to lux. Lux is the unit of brightness. 5, 6 rub to lux. 7, 8 hands go tight. Can you see me using my hands? Can you see me? Can all the participants see me? Can you just put the message in your chat box?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, that's good. See, 7, 8 hands go tight. This is what I mean by tight. See here, to clean the web spaces. Thank you all. To clean the web spaces, the hands go tight like this. So this is how you eliminate the bacteria present in the web of your hand. So 7, 8 hands go tight. 9, 10 thumbs then. So you have to rotate the thumb like this and clean the thumbs of both your hands. Then 11, 12 nail beds dwell. That means the soap and water or the antimicrobial hand rub, it has to enter into the nail beds because the organisms are more concentrated there. And this is the most neglected part of the hand while washing the hand. The web spaces, the nail beds, and the wrist, and sometimes the thumb. So every part of the hand has to be taken care of to remove the microorganisms. So 11, 12 nail beds dwell. 13, 14 wrist to clean. 1 to 14 hands go clean. All the bugs go unseen. So during the times of COVID also, this will be very useful for you if you practice proper hand hygiene repeatedly. You can to some extent avoid getting COVID-19 infection. So I'll repeat. 1, 2 hands are 2. 3, 4 hand rub pour. 5, 6 rub to lux. 7, 8 hands go tight to clean the web spaces. 9, 10 thumbs then. 11, 12 nail beds dwell. 13, 14 wrists to clean. 1 to 14 hands go clean and all the bugs go unseen. Similarly, next slide please. I have a poem in Kannada. 1, 2 ಕೈಗಳ ಹರಡು 3, 4 ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ರಬ್ ಹಾಕು. ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ರಬ್ ಅಥವಾ ಸೋಪು ನೀರು ಹಾಕು. 5, 6 ಉಜ್ಜು ಜೋರು. 7, 8 ಕೈಗಳ ಗಂಟು to clean the web spaces. 9, 10 ಹೆಬ್ಬೆಟ್ ಸುತ್ತು. 11, 12 ಉಗುರಲು ಹರಡು. 13, 14 ಮಣಿಕಟ್ಟು ಹಾಕು. 1 ರಿಂದ 14 ಹೀಗಿತ್ತು. ಕ್ರಿಮಿಗಳ ಕಾಟವು ಮುಗಿದಿತ್ತು. Whatever may be the organism, it may be a bacteria, it may be a virus, it may be a fungus, or any parasitic infective form. With the proper hand hygiene, you can prevent most of the infections, especially the COVID-19 that's going on as a pandemic now. Next slide, please. And biomedical waste management. In our hospital, we follow this. It's not applicable to all of you, but we have different color-coded bins where we have to segregate the waste and put it into appropriate waste bins. Similarly, at home, we can segregate the waste in such a way that the garbage, the kitchen waste is put into one particular dustbin or in a particular cover. Plastic waste can be put into a separate cover. And then the general waste, which is not that infectious, can be put into a different car. But now corporation is taking it in 2 forms, the dry waste and the wet waste. So it is useful if you segregate the dry and the wet waste. Wet waste can also be used for your garden. You just take all your kitchen waste and you put it into your plants. They just rot there and they act as fertilizers. Instead of producing more and more of waste from the domestic use, you can use this kitchen waste to enhance the growth of your plants or in your garden. Now I have another poem on biomedical waste, which is not really very important for you. Here I just brought it here to show that I have another poem devised to guide our healthcare workers how to segregate the different waste in a simple and understandable manner. Next slide, please. So this is one more in Kannada, because we have color-coded bins. You all know the song Banna Banna from movie Bandhana. So here I just say Banna Nama Aspatre Banna Nama Badukalu Banna Nimma Badukiso Banna. That means if you properly segregate the waste, you will be saving a lot of money in decontaminating the infected waste of the hospital, and the non-infected waste can be discarded like any other domestic waste. I won't be going into the details of it. Next slide, please. This is a continuation of the song. Next slide. This is in Hindi also. Hospital waste hai, ladki aankh mare. For people who know only Hindi, I have made another poem. Next slide. Next slide. This is the continuation. Next slide. Yeah. Now coming to the background of antimicrobial resistance and how to deal with it, we need to have some background about the usage of antimicrobial agents. Now, as shown in the diagram in this blue sector, the animal food, 70% of the antibiotics used are in the animal food. So the major chunk of the antibiotics that is used across the globe is in the animal food. And only 6% of antibiotics are used by humans in a rational way. Sorry, 9% in a rational way and 6% in a irrational way. And another 15% is used for animal therapeutics. So we are here just for constituting 9%. As humans, how do we tackle this? It's not made by animals, though it is in the animal food, not made by animals. This is in our hands. So the fertilizers or the animal food that is being used to feed animals should be prevented from mixing with antimicrobial agents. So this is the gravity of the usage of antimicrobial agents in the community. Next slide. Amongst the human use, you can see only 9% is the rational use, 10% is redundant, that's in the purple sector. Longer than needed, 33%, the antibiotics are used for more than the time required for killing the infectious agent in the body. And many antibiotics, 32% of antibiotics usage goes into treating non-infectious or non-bacterial causes of the disease. And many a times, the antimicrobial agents, you can see the green sector here, the antibiotics are used to treat the commensal bacteria. So what happens if you treat the commensal bacteria? The commensal bacteria die and makes the intestine more susceptible to other infections. This is what is happening. So this is what is happening. So how rational are we? So we are only 9% rational. Amongst the human use, we are only 9% rational in using the antimicrobial agents. So if we have to tackle the human use of antimicrobial agents, we need to tackle at the 91% of the usage of antibiotics irrationally. Next slide. Okay. Now, what are the goals of antimicrobial stewardship? You have to ensure the rational use of antimicrobial agents, reduce antimicrobial resistance, improve the patient outcome, improve patient safety, reduce healthcare cost. So finally, our goal is to reduce the healthcare cost. Not only that, we reduce the antimicrobial resistance to save the antimicrobial agents for posterity. That we must remember. For now, for our friends, our relatives, for humanity at present, we are saving the antibiotics, and also for the posterity, for the future generation to survive, we need to save the antimicrobial agents. Next slide. Now we have the antimicrobial stewardship team in our hospital. I'll not go too much into the details of this because you people are more interested in tackling the antimicrobial resistance at the community level. So in the antimicrobial stewardship team, we have a clinical microbiologist, an infectious disease specialist, an information system specialist, ID pharmacist, clinical pharmacist, hospital epidemiologist, and infection control professionals. So with this, we form a core team, and the core team play at this level and disseminate the education and knowledge to the various other healthcare workers to prevent irrational use of antimicrobial agents. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, antibiotics are targeted at various sites of the bacterial cell. Now, one is at the cell wall, and then it may be DNA or RNA synthesis. The cell wall antibiotics are beta-lactams and glycopeptides like vancomycin. And then DNA RNA synthesis, most often we have fluoroquinolones and rifamycins. And then folate synthesis inhibitors, trimethoprim sulfamethoxazide. Cell membrane, we have daptomycin, colistin, and polymyxin. Protein synthesis, linezolid, tetracycline, macrolides, aminoglycosides. And inactivating the enzymes like beta-lactams, aminoglycosides, macrolides, etc. How they develop resistance is by inactivating the enzymes. So this side I have shown the various places where the different antimicrobial agents act, and here how the bacteria can develop resistance. It may be by the efflux of the antibiotic, and then by immunity and bypass like tetracyclines, sulfonamides, and vancomycin, and target modification can be used by fluoroquinolones, rifamycins, vancomycins, penicillins, macrolides, and aminoglycosides. Just remember that the antimicrobial agents act at the different sites of the bacterial cell. Now, why am I showing you this slide? In the subsequent slides, I'll be telling you what are the different antibiotics that act at different levels of the bacterial cell. And one thing we must remember is we should never combine two antimicrobial agents acting at the same site. Next slide. So this battle between man and microbes has been eternal. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now here, for you people to remember, all of you are students of science, and most of you are from molecular biology. I think the background is molecular biology and microbiology. So here, I made a simple cartoon for you to remember how the different antimicrobial agents act at the different sites of the bacteria. Now for that, I have some mnemonics, and to join the mnemonics, have weave the story around it. Now here, Salim, a cross-border terrorist, is injured in the police encounter and admitted in the critical care unit of a hospital. He is lying on the cot. You can see COT. Can you see the cursor that I am moving? Not able to see? Not able to see the cursor?
No, madam. No.
Okay. Now, okay. Now, maybe I should have shared the slides, and then you would have been able to, see the cursor. Now, what you can see is Salim. This whole thing is a bacterial cell. Can I try sharing my screen? Excuse me, the
Yes,
operator.
ma'am, you can share it.
Yeah, can I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Okay. Shall I open my presentation here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
How do I do it? The share screen, is there a share screen option here?
There is option
Yes,
called
ma'am.
present now, ma'am.
Present now. Okay, there you
Yes,
go.
ma'am.
Present now. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, can you see it now? Share.
Not it, madam.
Now? Yeah, I think
It's coming, ma'am. It's coming.
yeah.
I think you have shared your entire screen.
Okay. How do I? You're presenting.
Now you can open your PowerPoint, which is below that.
Okay. Can you all see now?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. You can go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I'll just take you through this. I'll go through the slideshow. Yeah. I presented all of this. Yeah, here we go. Now, Salim, a cross-border terrorist, is injured in the police encounter and admitted in the critical care unit of a hospital. So here is Salim. He is lying on cot. How have I represented cot? This is C, O, and this is T. Can anybody tell me what this represents in a bacterial cell? You can share it through your chat. Or somebody can answer also, those who have the audio available. This represents the ribosome, the smaller, larger subunit and smaller subunit of ribosome, and this is the transfer RNA. This this site represents the synthesis of the RNA, or the synthesis of the protein. This is RNA, and this is a site of synthesis of the protein. So now we have Salim, who is lying on the cot in an ICU. A police constable here is guarding at the ICU door. This is the ICU door. A police constable at the door, this is D, at the door is guarding the ICU. And an investigating officer is waiting in the ICU counter to ask multiple relevant questions, MRQ, once Salim regains his consciousness. Then you have a staff nurse, STN. Staff nurse is in the ICU nursing Salim, and the big doctors, the administrators of the hospital, are at the entrance or at the administrative port where they're discussing on the management of Salim. So this whole thing, though I call it as an ICU, this represents a bacterial cell. And this is the ribosome, and Salim is lying on this ribosome cot, COT. Now, if we expand this, here, BIG, big doctors with security. Now here, BIG represents the cell wall of the bacteria. And the police constable at the door, PC at the door, this represents the cytoplasmic membrane. And Salim on cot represents the ribosome. The investigating officer at the counter here, that is MCQ, it represents the nucleic acid of the bacterial cell, and STN is at the cytoplasm. The staff nurse is, shuttling between the MRQ person, the one who is waiting to ask MRQ, that is the nurses station here, and the Salim Scott. So staff nurse is the one who is treating Salim. So now if we expand all these mnemonics, so you know Salim lying on the cot is at the ribosome, and the big doctor BG is at the cell wall, PC at the cytoplasmic membrane which constitutes the door, and then the investigating officer is waiting here to ask multiple relevant questions to Salim once he regains the consciousness, and this is the staff nurse which represents the metabolism in the cytoplasm of the bacterial cell. Now if we expand this, now BG. B is beta-lactam antibiotics. All penicillins, cephalosporins, carbapenems, etc. They act on the cell wall. So you have B here. So this is cell wall. And then the glycopeptides like vancomycin, teicoplanin, etc. They also act on the cell wall. Now PC at the door represents the cytoplasmic membrane. P is polymyxin, C is colistin, and D is daptomycin. D cannot be seen properly, but this is D. D is the daptomycin. Then Salim, if we expand, Salim and COT at the ribosome, that means at the protein synthesis, S represents streptogramins, A represents aminoglycosides, Li represents liposamides, M represents macrolides, and then C, the COT, C represents chloramphenicol, this O represents oxazolidinones, and T represents tetracycline. Now MRQ, which acts at the nucleic acid synthesis, M is metronidazole, R is rifampicin, and Q is quinolones. And coming to the inhibitors of folic acid synthesis, which happens in the cytoplasm and then finally prevent the nucleic acid synthesis, S is sulfamethoxazole, T is trimethoprim, and N is nitrofurantoin. So this simple story will help you in remembering what antibiotic acts at what point of the cell. This is important because you must remember, if you combine two antimicrobial agents, you must combine them in such a way that they act at different sites. So for example, if you are using a beta-lactam antibiotic like ampicillin, you must combine it with aminoglycoside. A beta-lactam with aminoglycoside, which acts at the site of protein synthesis. So to remember which antibiotic acts where, this simple cartoon and a story woven around it will help you remember. So this is how you have to first know the knowledge of site of action of antimicrobial agents and then make the choice of antimicrobial agents for treating the patients. Now, coming to the antibiotic stewardship, the national guidelines, I won't be going too much into the details of this, but we must know what is the definition of rational use of antibiotics. Rational use of antibiotic means choice of the right antibiotic, whether it is an empirical therapy or definitive therapy. Empirical means, for example, a patient has come with upper respiratory infection. If you think that it is due to tonsillitis caused by a bacteria, so thinking that it's a bacterial infection, you give the antibiotic. Definitive therapy would be, once you take the sample for culture and sensitivity, the organism that is grown and the antibiotic sensitivity, looking at the antibiotic sensitivity, you prescribe the antibiotic. That is what is definitive therapy. So choice of right antibiotic, it may be empirical or definitive. So even if you choose an empirical treatment, we have guidelines, national guidelines and global guidelines to choose the empirical antimicrobial agent. And definitive, again, it depends on the culture sensitivity report. Then after that, see, rational use of antibiotic, it's not just the choice of right antibiotic. We have to also think of escalation or de-escalation. What is escalation and what is de-escalation? See, for example, if the patient had respiratory tract infection, say lower respiratory tract infection, and the patient was started on ampicillin or amoxicillin, but the culture and sensitivity report shows that this amoxicillin is not useful on the patient, and you will have to use piperacillin tazobactam. So going up from a lower level antibiotic to a higher level antibiotic is called escalation. So if you started off with a smaller antibiotic or low level antibiotic, then if you switch over to a higher level antibiotic, we call it as escalation. But what is rational use of antibiotics? Proper escalation is a rational use of antibiotic. You should be justified in increasing the level of antibiotic. Say you stopped using amoxicillin and you started using piperacillin tazobactam, a higher antibiotic. Only if you are justified, that means it is the rational use of antibiotic. What is de-escalation? It is opposite of that. The patient has come with severe respiratory tract infection. So we use straight away piperacillin tazobactam because the patient's condition is very bad. We use piperacillin tazobactam. But once the culture and sensitivity report comes, you get to know that it is susceptible, the organism is susceptible to amoxicillin. So from a higher antibiotic, changing over to the lower antibiotic is called de-escalation. Or if you start from IV to, change from IV to oral, it is de-escalation. Or from oral to IV, if you go, it is escalation. So whenever you do escalation and de-escalation of antimicrobials, there should be some rationale behind. And then, what are the other definitions of rational use of antibiotics? Using the antimicrobial agent in the right dose, the correct dose, based on minimum inhibitory concentration of the antibiotic, pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of the antibiotic, renal function test and liver function test. So use the right dose based on these parameters. That is also rational use of antibiotic. If you choose the right antibiotic and not used in the right dose, is not rational use of antibiotic. And then right duration based on the guidelines. We have national guidelines, global guidelines, and based also on the clinical response. If you have to use the right duration of antibiotic depending upon the guidelines or the clinical response. Again, in the right route of administration based on the site of infection. For example, the patient has got CNS infection, that is central nervous system infection. Patient has meningitis. If you use oral antibiotics, it will not reach the cerebrospinal fluid. So using the antibiotic in the right route also constitutes to rational use of antibiotics. And antibiotics should be used for right duration of infusion. Right duration is one factor, and right duration of infusion based on the half-life of the antibiotic, the trough level, the lowest concentration achievable in the body is called the trough level, and it should be maintained above the minimum inhibitory concentration. Maybe all this is a little complicated. If you ask me for the doubts in the end, I'll be able to answer your doubts. So rational use of antibiotics means right choice of antibiotic, proper escalation or de-escalation as the case requires, and giving the antibiotic in the right dose for right duration and right route of administration, and the infusion is to be properly timed and the duration should be maintained based on the half-life, and depending upon the trough level of the antibiotic, it should be maintained above the minimum inhibitory concentration. Now, the key steps in antimicrobial stewardship, this is in the hospital, so I won't be discussing in detail. At the community level, we will discuss. Now, here we need the help of the management, and we need the manpower. We need funds for that. We need to have freedom, the antibiotic, proper prescription. The microbiologist or the infectious disease specialist should have the freedom to question other people. So all these things are required for the rational use of antibiotics at the hospital level. Now, one more important thing is whether it is in the hospital or at the community level, for the rational use of antimicrobial agents, you need to have proper diagnostic support Now, some life-saving investigation should be available. For example, when the patient is in sepsis, he's stuporous, he's sinking, all the major organs are dysfunctional. So during that time, you must be able to have some sepsis markers and then proper investigations to detect the organism causing the infection, so that we use the specific antimicrobial agent to treat the infection. So even in the community, you require some amount of diagnostic support. But this kind of facility, like looking at the sepsis marker like procalcitonin, antigen detection for pneumococci and legionella, leptospira antibody, all the etc., it can be done at a district level in a tertiary care hospital. For example, in our hospital, we do all this. But in the community, what can be done? So this is all where we all need to work to improve the diagnostic facility at the community level. This is one place where we all need to pitch in and improve the diagnostic capacities at the rural level. And we should see that the antimicrobial agents are priced reasonably to reach out to all. And then some complete automation of microbiology, it's only at the tertiary healthcare level, not at the community level, like Vitek2, rapid molecular test, and MALDI-TOF. We have all this except this MALDI-TOF. Shortly we're likely to get. So this is in a tertiary care hospital, but at the rural or the community level, you must have at least these things. Now this, we need to have the pharmacodynamic support from the clinical pharmacy department to detect the levels of antibiotic. All this is not required at the community level. We need to assess the manpower, fully functional hospital infection control committee and infection control officer. We need to have a clinical pharmacist, stewardship nurses and doctors, and 24/7 reporting facility for culture and sensitivity at the microbiology department, and a dedicated infectious disease physician. And IT support also is important at the hospital level, but IT support is also important at the community level. How we need to go about utilizing the IT support, all that I have some innovative games that I have devised to promote rational use of antibiotics at the community level. We can discuss on one-to-one basis once the corona is over, the pandemic is over. Then setting up antimicrobial stewardship team. This is in the hospital, which I don't want to tell you. And the stewardship doing person should be a good leader. It should be either an ID physician or a clinical microbiologist. And then we need to have antibiotic policy of the hospital. See, here at the hospital level, I'm talking about antibiotic policy, but also at the community level, we have the national antibiotic guidelines. And these guidelines should be followed by every doctor and make a stringent rule to prevent irrational use of antimicrobial agents by the doctors. So at this point, for rational use of antimicrobial agents, maybe this particular club can pitch in and ensure that doctors use antimicrobial agents rationally, and they shall follow the national antibiotic policy. We have a national antibiotic policy beautifully designed by our clinical microbiologists and the ID physicians across our country. So we should ensure that we must have or we follow the national antibiotic guideline. And then formulary restriction is to be followed. See, this is at the hospital level that I have set up. I'm just giving the examples. And at the community level, many people, many of the patients, they go straight to the pharmacy and ask, I have respiratory infection, give me some antibiotics or some tablets. They may ask for some tablets, but the pharmacist may dispense an antibiotic. So the unrestricted dispensing of antibiotics can be done only for first and second generation cephalosporins. Cotrimoxazole, it's available as Septran. Macrolides like erythromycin, azithromycin, etc. And fluoroquinolines like ciprofloxacin, norfloxacin, etc. So please remember, when you form a club, you students should ensure that if you take up a community, a particular geographical area, in that particular community, just ensure that the pharmacist can dispense only these antibiotics, not the semi-restricted and never the restricted antimicrobial agents. This restricted antimicrobial agent shall be dispensed only in the hospital. Semi-restricted may be in the community pharmacy only by the prescription of a registered medical practitioner, that too if he is practicing rational use of antibiotics and following the national antibiotic policy. So at the community level, we must see that only these antibiotics are dispensed. So for this, no approval is required. The community pharmacist, that is the pharmacy dispenser, can dispense these drugs, and the others are to be restricted. So when you start functioning, when the club starts functioning, this is another area where you have to concentrate on. Then antibiotic recycling. This point also you can keep in mind when you're functioning at the community level. Earlier, ampicillin used to be widely used. Even quinolones, even now they're being used. Quinolones, penicillin, this Cetron, that is cotrimoxazole, chloramphenicol. All these were used for, except penicillin, they were used for treating enteric fever, that is typhoid fever. Now, just barring this penicillin, if I just tell the story of the antibiotic resistance of enteric fever or typhoid fever, earlier all these drugs were used right, left and center, and the salmonella causing enteric fever developed resistance to all these drugs. Then after that, doctors realized that these antibiotics no longer work. So what they did, they stopped using these antibiotics. Ampicillin, quinolone, that is ciprofloxacin, Cetron and chloramphenicol. So after a decade or more, over a decade of stopping the use of all these antibiotics, the organisms have regained sensitivity to ampicillin, quinolones, cotrimoxazole and chloramphenicol. So just by withholding these antibiotics, the organisms have developed sensitivity to these antibiotics. So that means when we do not have newer antibiotic agents or newer antimicrobial agents, we can stop the use of some group of antimicrobial agents for some time, allow the organisms to develop sensitivity to these antibiotics, and then start using. And this is called as antibiotic recycling. So in your club, concentrate on antibiotic recycling in the community. And this is for auditing. Here, this is at the hospital level. At the community level also, we can do the auditing. How can we do the auditing? Every general practitioner or a primary health physician dispenses an antibiotic that is purchased from the pharmacy, and except the first line or unrestricted antibiotics, other antibiotics should not be dispensed. So if you incorporate the entire network of the pharmacists coming into a closed network, and this can be visualized, what antimicrobial agents have been dispensed by these community pharmacists can be visualized. You can do the audit. Was the prescription there? Was the prescription right? Has the doctor prescribed the antimicrobial agent rationally? And then if he has not done it rationally, tackle the doctor. And despite the rational prescription of the antibiotic, if the dispenser, that is the community pharmacist, has not dispensed the right antibiotic, you take the community pharmacist into target. So doing this auditing will help us control the irrational use of antimicrobial agents. Now the back-end strategies, reviewing, antibiotic review, the prescriptions can be taken and reviewed. This will be done in the hospital, not at the community level. And then we can incorporate some of these principles in the community level practice as well. Maybe once you start the club, you can think of all these things. Education and training. This is another important component for antimicrobial stewardship. Every stakeholder, who is the stakeholder here? The physician, the surgeon, nurse, pharmacist, UG and PGs of medicine, and then even the general public. So all these things will be done at the hospital level or a medical college level. The general public, maybe you can look at educating the general public on the rational use of antibiotics. And education through innovative games. This is one of the innovative games, understanding the site of action of the drugs that is not for the community. It's for people who work for the community. Some of you who are students of science can just have this knowledge of site of antibiotic action. And then when the combined prescription is given, then you may question. So education through innovative games. And you should have the antibiotic policy. Our hospital policy is different and the community policy is also available at CDC Delhi. And some innovative games I have devised, like the seashore game. Now, I don't know if you all know about Enterobacteriaceae group of organisms like E. coli, Klebsiella, Proteus, Serratia. So for these, and just one example for rational choice of antimicrobial agents I'm telling you. So these are called fermenters, which are Enterobacteriaceae. And these are called non-fermenters. All these belong to gram-negative group of organisms. But these Enterobacteriaceae need to be treated with different antibiotics. And the non-fermenter group needs to be treated with different antibiotic. I'm just explaining the game here. First and foremost, the person who prescribes should know what are fermenters, what are non-fermenters. So for that, I have made a mnemonic, KEEPS. K is Klebsiella, E. coli, E is Enterobacter, P Proteae, S Serratia. And then this is on the sea side. You know the seashore game, I think. You draw a line. On one side is the sea, the other side is the shore. Now, you just, this non-fermenters, B is Burkholderia, E is Elizabethella kingae, A is Acinetobacter, P is Pseudomonas, S is Stenotropomonas. So this mnemonic KEEPS is for fermenters and BEEPS is for non-fermenters. So what you do is make the people stand on the line in the middle and just name one organism. Say Enterobacteriaceae or Enterobacter. So he has to go towards the sea, this side, to the left of the line. And if you say Acinetobacter, they should move to the shore. Just like the seashore game or Kere Dada Ata that we used to play as kids, same this thing can be played. I mean, I have different games devised for teaching the students and even the general public. This is one of the games that I wanted to show you. And I have the musical chair game. Here, a particular organism has a drug of choice, a particular disease has a drug of choice. For example, if the patient has tonsillitis, the drug of choice would be penicillin. Now, we don't use injectables. So, the drug of choice would be erythromycin or azithromycin. So, like that, we have various questions and various organisms having a single drug of choice. So, the question is given and put on the chairs. And the answers are pasted onto the chairs, like the musical chair you arrange, and then give the questions to the participants. The participants are informed beforehand what antibiotic is used for what organism or what disease. So allow them to go around the chair and then play the music. Once the music is stopped, they all go and sit at the right chair, not whatever is available. So for example, Staphylococcus, you may choose linezolid. Or enteric fever, you choose ceftriaxone. So like that, a single answer, the drug of choice, if you have, you educate people on what is the drug to be used. You as, student community, you want to have a club of antimicrobial stewardship. You can use these games even to train the doctors at the community level. Next, sorry. This is death by double strike. Some diseases require treatment with two agents. So, for example, if you're treating meningitis, you combine one beta-lactam agent along with an aminoglycoside. So two people play here. You place a scale here, and one person should hit from the one side like to the scale. The other person will hit like this onto the scale. So when both of them hit at the right direction and with the right speed or the same speed, this scale should go perpendicular to this line. I mean, it should sit on this line. So that they understand that two drugs have to be used for treating a particular infection. This is another game, death by double strike. Similarly, I have threesome awesome game where you need to use 3 drugs. I'll not go too much into the detail of this. This is for medical students, and monkeying with donkey. If you have 4 drugs to be combined, for example, tuberculosis, you need to use isoniazid and then rifampicin, ethambutol, and pyrazinamide. So name these places with the names of the antibiotic. And there is a game called donkey game. Right now, I'll not go to the details of that, but with that game, you can remember what are the 4 important antibiotics to be used for treatment of tuberculosis, and similarly other diseases. Gang attack, for one particular, this thing is a question. Maybe the answer, for this question, the answer is only this red circles, and the person having a particular chit. And these people should go to him. And for this one, maybe the blue one, all the blue, this one, chits. And for this one, maybe green. And for this one, maybe yellow. Like that, to understand the rationale behind the use of a right antibiotic, through these games, we can educate people to understand. And variable choices, we have various other case scenarios. We give the case and then ask them to solve. Give the choice of antibiotics and ask them to choose. This is all for this medical students. Of course, on the similar lines, we can develop some games for the community also, so that they understand at the community level what antibiotic they can take, what antibiotic they should not take, and how long they should take. And then they should not stop the antibiotic in between without completing the course. And all those things through different games, we can educate them. Evaluation of the stewardship program. Once you start off, then we can think of evaluation of the stewardship program. Then alternate implementable strategies can be thought of. The use of higher end antibiotics quantities to be measured, that's all at the hospital level. Like these are the restricted antibiotics like tigecycline, colistin, and carbapenems. So if the quantity of antibiotic used is more, that indicates more of irrational use of antimicrobial agents. So the final goal of antimicrobial stewardship is to cause least harm to the patient and future patients. We save the antibiotics to save lives at present and save lives in the posterity. So with this, I end my talk. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any queries or any help required for your starting up your club and activities of your club, feel free to approach me to devise various games. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer, madam.
Thank you so much, madam. Now, ma'am has given a very beautiful lecture on how to deal with the antimicrobial resistance and use of antibiotics. Now, we are welcome for the questions. Please drop your questions in the chat box. Sachin will read out the questions to ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. We have a question by Dr. Vidya.
Yeah, please tell me.
How vitamin C is helping in boosting immune system?
Okay. This vitamin C is being utilized for the synthesis of various immunoglobulins and especially hemoglobin. So immunoglobulins are the ones which fight against the microorganisms, that is humoral immune response. So vitamin C helps in the synthesis of these immunoglobulins, and that is how you will boost your immunity. There are various other immune boosters, and nowadays you see lots of them on the TV. So all of them, to keep the cells, the T cells, the white blood cells healthy, these minerals and various vitamins are essential. So that's how they boost the immunity. Yeah, next question.
Another question is by Raguraj Chauhan.
Yeah.
Can microbes replace the animal models as ethical concerns are involved for multi-drug resistance studies? For example, Saccharomyces cerevisiae shares a common niche with humans.
Yes. Yeah, this Saccharomyces cerevisiae is used as a probiotic agent. This is an yeast. But animal studies have to be done. Maybe the Saccharomyces cerevisiae can be used to prevent the growth of other microorganisms, which is used as a probiotic to prevent the colonization of pathogenic organisms in the human gut. You may do it in vitro in the laboratory. You grow this Saccharomyces cerevisiae and try to grow the other organisms. This may prevent the growth. But apart from preventing the pathogenic organisms, you need to study what are the adverse effects these drugs have on the human system or on the animal system. So probably some mammals they use to study on the adverse events of the drug. So microorganisms cannot replace the animals to study these things. I know ethics committee, they demand that you don't harm animals, don't use much of animals and all that. But microbes cannot replace animals or even human volunteers. Any drug trial or a vaccine trial. Now that our vaccine, Indian vaccine, Covaxin is being, tried at different levels, it's gone to almost phase 3 trial. You can't have it on microorganisms. That's in vitro. But to know its effect on human beings, you need to first do it on animals and then the human trials. So the human trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. Phase 1 is to predominantly document the adverse events, and then phase 2 in a little larger population, and phase 3 in a much larger population. Now we have to look at the phase 3 trial of this Covaxin. So even for this one, any drugs or vaccine trials, microbes cannot replace animals or human beings. More questions, please?
Yes, ma'am. The same person wants to know your comment on the possible use of nanomedicine utilizing gold nanoparticle and graphene quantum dots in the field of multi-drug resistance. He's asking, do they have the potential impact to combat these issues?
It can be tried. Many people are trying various this nanotechnology using nanoparticles. Some metallic nanoparticles and various other particles, chemicals are being used, and they are tagged along with antimicrobial agent, and they should go and hit the microorganism and kill them. So the nanoparticles will help in targeting the antimicrobial agent to the site of infection or to the microorganisms only, and the dosage required for treatment may be reduced using these nanoparticles. So if you reduce the dosage, even the adverse events caused by these antimicrobial agents can also be reduced. So that is an important application of nanotechnology in treating various infections.
There is a question from Meghana.
Yeah.
The antibiotic resistance is generally a result of natural selection or gene transfer. Are there any other possible mechanisms of antibiotic resistance development which could be manipulated?
It could be manipulated. Of course, as you know, mutations, every cell, every nucleic acid, as it goes on replicating, it will undergo some natural mutation. In the nature itself, say every 10 to the power of 6 or every 10 to the power of 5 replication cycles it goes through, there may be a mutation. But there can be a mechanism to correct it also. But the antimicrobial, the microbial population can undergo some mutation to combat the antimicrobial agent. So for example, the target of a particular antibiotic, say for example, penicillin or all beta-lactam antibiotics, is they produce beta-lactamase, and beta-lactam antibiotic is destroyed. That is one by either acquiring the resistance or the mutation. These are the ways the microorganisms develop different resistant mechanisms. The other mechanisms could be like the efflux pump. I was talking about the efflux pump where the macrolides, especially erythromycin. Erythromycin, once it is ingested by the bacterial cell, bacteria develops a mechanism to throw it out. Efflux, that is discharge of antimicrobial agent from within the cell to outside the cell. So similarly, there are various other mechanisms which are all genetically mediated. And also there are other environmental factors that can play in development of the resistance of the microorganisms. For example, in the anaerobic atmosphere, the aminoglycosides cannot act in the anaerobic atmosphere. So all aminoglycosides are resistant to, all aminoglycosides cannot act on anaerobic organisms. Anaerobic organisms are resistant to aminoglycosides. Like that, the environmental factors and various other factors do play in contributing to the resistance mechanism in the microorganisms. Yeah, any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. There is a question from Dr. Raghavendra Hegdekate. He's asking whether we can discontinue antibiotics while escalation and de-escalation. He also has questions with respect to antibiotic resistance. Bacteriostatics or bactericidal antibiotics are equal contributors. At present, which is the most serious disease to treat due to antibiotic resistance?
Okay, antibiotic resistance. The first question is on. Can you just repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. The first question is whether we can discontinue antibiotics while escalation and de-escalation.
Yeah. Suppose you're being treated with the wrong antimicrobial agent. As an empirical therapy, it would have been started with, say, for example, linezolid. Some patient had respiratory tract infection and the doctor unknowingly starts the patient on linezolid, which can act on gram-positive organisms. And then finally, he gets to know that a gram-negative organism is responsible for the infection. So if you have started the patient on linezolid, then you stop that. You need to stop and start the patient on antibiotics which can act on gram-negative organisms. So whether it is escalation or de-escalation, even while de-escalating, if the patient is already on, say, tigecycline, and if the patient is, if the organism causing infection is sensitive to, say, quinolones, you can stop using whatever higher antibiotic, linezolid or any other piperacillin, tazobactam, tigecycline or colistin. From that, you go back to the quinolone. So you can stop that. If you are doing the escalation or de-escalation, you can definitely stop the previous antibiotic that is being used and start the patient on a newer antibiotic to which the organism is sensitive. It can be done. Sorry.
He's also asking whether bacteriostatics or bactericidal antibiotics are equal contributors to the antibiotic resistance.
Yeah, it's a good question actually. The bacteriostatic antibiotics usually are not used as single agents. They should be combined with a bactericidal agent. For example, this colistin and polymyxins, they're bacteriostatic. So by themselves, they cannot be used alone. They have to combine with some other antibiotic. It's always better to choose a bactericidal agent than a bacteriostatic agent. But you have no other go. The organism is sensitive only to colistin. For example, our pseudomonas can develop resistance to all antibiotics. It can be sensitive only to colistin. Use colistin, but along with that, any other beta-lactam antibiotic which is bactericidal can be used. So between the two, we prefer to use bactericidal agent, not the bacteriostatic agent. And you asked me another question. Present, which infection is very difficult to treat? To tell you, tuberculosis, which has developed multi-drug resistance, is very difficult to treat and very difficult to control because tuberculosis is spreading like wildfire. We talk about COVID these days, more people are dying out of tuberculosis than COVID. The tuberculosis has developed multiple drug resistance. We have MDR TB, XDR TB. XDR is extended drug resistant TB, or pan resistant tuberculosis. So this is a bigger enemy to conquer than COVID actually, especially in India. And other infections which are difficult to treat are the gram-negative infections, especially who develop enteric infections and the organisms get into the blood and cause sepsis, and they affect various important organs. There is renal failure, there is hepatic failure, there is lung failure, and all major organ failure. So it is very, very difficult to treat these gram-negative infections, especially when the patient develops sepsis and multi-organ dysfunction. That is mainly because of drug resistance. We were earlier talking about MRSA, that is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is a gram-positive organism. But gram-positive organisms can somehow be tackled, but it has now become very difficult to tackle gram-negative organisms. And we see in our intensive care units, various intensive care units, they're admitted there with multi-organ dysfunction in sepsis. So such patients, we find it extremely difficult to treat. Next question, please.
The investment in the development of new antibiotics is no longer a wise investment for the pharmaceutical industries compared to drug for chronic diseases. What's your view on this, ma'am?
That's the concept now. See, many people are trying out different antimicrobial agents, different groups and newer mechanism of action. I have discussed the mechanism of action of various drugs at various sites, isn't it? Now people are trying to discover the different antimicrobial agents, but they have failed miserably. And then what happens is, even if it is a success, they use it for some time and the microbes develop resistance. And then the company which is manufacturing that particular antibiotic undergoes a lot of loss. You can no longer use those antibiotics. So now, to play safe, what they're doing now, they don't want to invest too much on this antimicrobial agent because anyway the organisms are going to develop resistance. So some chronic diseases like for tuberculosis, not tuberculosis, I'm sorry, the diabetes, hypertension, congestive heart, ischemic heart diseases, etc. They continuously manufacture these agents, and there is no dip in the market for these agents. Because in our country, especially, more and more people are becoming diabetic, more people are becoming hypertensive, most of the people have ischemic heart disease and various kidney diseases, etc., etc. So, to play very safe, they try to develop agents which can act on chronic diseases like this than antimicrobial agents. It's a fact. But if we stop doing any kind of research in antimicrobial activity and developing antimicrobial agents, one day mankind will fail in front of the microbes. I told you the battle between man and microbes is eternal, and man will fail in combating against various infections. For example, this COVID itself, we do not have a specific antiviral agent. Though remdesivir is an antiviral agent which can act on COVID virus, but many people develop a multi-organ dysfunction, failure, and they succumb to COVID-19. Yeah, next question, please.
Anushri is asking, will microbes develop resistance against Ayurvedic medicines also?
It can develop resistance to any medicine. After all, our allopathic medicines are derived from the plant products. Many of them are derived from plant products. And many of the antibiotics are derived from the bacteria or some fungi. For example, penicillin is derived from Penicillium notatum. It is a fungus. And some of the plant products are used as antibiotics or antimicrobial agents. So if you use the Ayurvedic product, it is the crude form of the chemical. In the allopathic medicine, what we do is we purify them and remove the chemical component which is responsible for the adverse events, and only the pure form of the drug is being used. People think that Ayurvedic medicines have no adverse effects. and everything can be conquered and cured by Ayurvedic medicine. That's a wrong notion. I'm not discouraging Ayurvedic medicine, but only thing is allopathic medicines also are derived from plant products. We are conducting a lot of such studies in our hospital, in our laboratory, for the antimicrobial activity of various plant extracts. So there is a chance of the Ayurvedic products also developing resistance. Okay? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We'll be taking this last question.
Yeah.
Manasa is asking this. The fact that commensals are also targeted by antibiotics and this affects the gut microbiome. Taking an example of Staphylococcus aureus, which is such a commensal, how exactly, directly or indirectly, does this affects the gut microbiome and in turn affect the brain?
In turn affect the brain. Yeah?
Brain. Yes, ma'am. Brain.
Okay. Okay. See, Staphylococcus aureus is not a normal commensal in the first place. Yes, when we use the antibiotics, the gut microbiome also gets affected. So the patients are then susceptible to all kinds of infection causing diarrhea. So it's either candida or any other microorganism that can cause diarrhea can infect the gut. So then what we do is we use the probiotic agents. But nowadays antibiotics are not accompanied by the probiotic agents. The researchers say that the gut microbiome gets restored after some time, though they get killed by the antibiotic. Once you stop the antibiotic and start eating various kinds of food, you will regenerate your normal gut flora. Okay? And Staphylococcus aureus, yes, it can cause food poisoning. It can be in the carrier state in the respiratory tract. And it's not a commensal actually. It can be a carrier without causing any infection. It can just be carried in the throat or in the nostrils or in the hands of the individual. And then coming to what you said, the function of the brain, these antimicrobial agents, the antibiotics, killing the normal commensal, maybe some other commensal getting into the gut, and the metabolism of that may affect the brain. It's possible. Definitely, some psychological disorders are, related to the gut microbiome. After all, the feelings in the brain are all chemical mediated. So whatever may be the chemical that is synthesized, and whatever is the nutrient that is absorbed by this, which helps the digestion of the nutrients and absorption of various essential amino acids or fatty acids or any other carbohydrate, these chemicals are the ones which constitute the emotions in the brain. So many people do say that a different microbiome in the human gut can cause various psychological disorders. It's possible. A lot of research is going on in this field, and many people are doing the research in this particular field. But no specific answer has been obtained by various researchers. The research is going on. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for answering the questions, ma'am.
Yeah.
Now we'll just move on to the concluding remarks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, madam, for your engaging the informative talk on antimicrobial resistance, a ticking time bomb, and also answering all our questions. So we definitely could not have asked for a better kickstart to our club, as you have mentioned all the basic steps to be carried out for better hygiene, especially the hand hygiene anthem, and very creative way of making us understand by deriving various analogies for a bacterial cell and an antibiotic. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.